My younger brother and I had a secret love affair before I got married. Hello everyone and welcome back to Love 30K Stories. In this video, I will share a heartfelt and compelling story that has deeply impacted my life. I had a happy childhood in Willowbrook until my mother passed away when I was 16. Afterward, my father remarried a gentlewoman and brought with her a son, Helena. At first, Adrian and I kept our distance, but we gradually developed unexpected feelings for each other over time. Our relationship crossed the line of siblings as we secretly fell in love. After Lucian left for college, I met my current husband and started building the happy family I always dreamed of. However, my past with Lucian still haunts me, leaving me torn between confessing to my husband or keeping the secret forever. If this story touched you, please like the video and subscribe to the channel to support its growth and ensure more captivating content like this reaches you. Hello everyone, my name is Helena and I was born and raised in Willowbrook, a serene countryside village surrounded by rolling hills, lush green meadows, and a sparkling river that winds through the town. This picturesque place, dotted with cozy cottages and blooming gardens, was where I spent most of my childhood. My mother, a kind-hearted woman with a warm smile, would wake early to prepare breakfast, her laughter filling our modest but love-filled home. My father, who though soft-spoken and introverted, was a steadfast source of strength, working relentlessly to provide for our family. Our simple house brimmed with joy and togetherness, creating memories that felt perfect, or so I believed. When I was just 16, my world fell apart. My mother passed away after a brief, unexpected illness, so sudden that I barely had time to grasp what was happening. The loss left an aching void in my heart, and I watched my father retreat into loneliness in a home that once resonated with laughter and warmth. Life continued, but we were no longer the family we had been. Each morning I went to school, and each evening I returned to the same kitchen where simple meals awaited. But my mother's presence was gone, leaving a hollow space at the table. Though only the two of us remained, the emotional distance between my father and me felt greater than the physical space within our home. When I was 19, my father remarried, and it was a shock to me. Although I understood that he deserved happiness after so many years of loneliness, it was still hard to accept. His new wife, my stepmother, was a compassionate and gentle woman who brought along her son, Adrian, a year younger than me. At first, adjusting to this new family dynamic was challenging, especially trying to connect with Adrian. He was quiet, like me, and seemed to be navigating this unfamiliar situation. In the evenings, we would all gather in the living room, Dad and my stepmother, chatting about work or plans for the future, while Adrian and I exchanged awkward glances before quickly looking away. Slowly, family meals became an opportunity to break the ice, allowing us to learn more about one another and take small steps toward becoming a real family. Strangely and subtly, Adrian often picked up food for me during meals, a small gesture that left me slightly unsettled. He remained quiet, rarely speaking, but occasionally his glances lingered longer than usual. I couldn't help but wonder if I was overthinking, or if it was simply the affection of a younger brother toward his new, older sister. However, as time passed, an unspoken tension slowly developed between us, something we both chose to ignore. The feelings that should have been purely sibling-like started blurring in ways that were difficult to define. There were moments when, without warning, my heart raced just from his presence nearby, and I hated that reaction. I hated how my thoughts began to shift, betraying the boundaries of what I knew I should feel, and I wished desperately to see him only as my brother. One late night, I heard soft footsteps in the hallway. Adrian quietly entered my room, as he occasionally did. Usually, we'd exchange a few words before he returned to his room, but this time, he lingered longer than usual. His gaze rested on me, deep and searching, as though he had something he wanted to say. I felt a wave of uncertainty, the air between us growing thick with an unspoken tension. Unsure of how to respond, I hesitated before nodding slightly, silently inviting him to stay a little longer. We sat in the dimly lit room, two people inexplicably drawn to each other yet separated by the very nature of our relationship. The silence between us was heavy, filled with unspoken words that neither dared to say. Over time, I had developed a growing fondness for Adrian. There was no denying it. He was undeniably handsome, and it was something I couldn't help but notice every time he was near. At times, I wondered if I should feel guilty for the way I felt. After all, he was my brother in name, and that should have meant something. But I often pushed those thoughts aside, dismissing them as fleeting moments of weakness, likely caused by the intimacy we had developed or the natural bond that comes from living under the same roof. Our rooms were next to each other on the second floor, while my father and stepmother slept downstairs. This closeness led to moments of unease, where the tension between us became impossible to ignore. Adrian and I were both at a transitional stage in our lives, each facing the complexities of growing up, navigating the challenges of youth, and dealing with the weight of family expectations. At the same time, we were grappling with emotions neither dared to address. I was just a freshman in college, trying to find my place in this new chapter of life, while Adrian was a senior in high school, deep in preparation for his final exams. We were adapting to new routines and responsibilities, yet despite the busyness of our lives, the unspoken tension between us remained ever present. Some evenings, after school, we would end up sitting together on the living room sofa, the soft glow of the television casting shadows across the room. Despite the comfortable setting, neither of us spoke much. It felt as though we were both afraid that speaking out would unravel the emotions we were each trying to understand. The bond between Adrian and me was unlike anything a sibling should feel. It was something more complex, something I couldn't easily define or explain. As time passed, I gradually realized, with a blend of guilt and confusion, that my feelings for him were much deeper than simple familial affection. The realization was unsettling, yet undeniable. I couldn't ignore how my heart raced whenever he was near, how every glance, every accidental touch felt charged with an intensity that unsettled me. It was hard to reconcile this growing attraction with the role I was supposed to play in his life. Each fleeting moment between us seemed to carry an unspoken weight, one I wasn't sure we were ready to acknowledge. One quiet evening, as everything seemed to fall into place under the illusion of normalcy, I had an unsettling feeling that things were about to change. My parents had left for a 5-day trip, leaving just Adrian and me at home, and the weight of their absence seemed to magnify the turmoil brewing within me. The house felt different, quieter, and there was a palpable tension in the air, as though the stillness was a sign that something was shifting. The days ahead, with only Adrian and I for company, seemed to stretch out in front of me, each moment fraught with anticipation and uncertainty. It was as if the absence of our parents had created a space where unspoken emotions could no longer be ignored. At first, we thought it would simply be a chance to unwind, free from the watchful eyes of our parents. That evening, we settled into the living room and put on a romantic movie, not because we were particularly interested in it, but to pass the time. I prepared some dried squid, fruit, and a few cans of beer, a small treat to relax after a busy week. The movie started light-heartedly, and we chatted as usual, our conversation punctuated by soft laughter that filled the quiet house. But then the film shifted unexpectedly to a passionate scene between a couple. Suddenly, the laughter stopped. An unfamiliar silence enveloped us, and the atmosphere grew heavy. The easy comfort between us dissolved, replaced by an undeniable tension. I could feel Adrian's eyes on me, not the casual glance of a brother, but something more intense. A wave of warmth spread through me, leaving me flushed and unsure. I clenched my beer can, struggling to keep my composure, but my heart pounded erratically. Before I could fully comprehend what was unfolding, Adrian swept me into his arms with an urgency I had never felt before. His embrace was strong, his kisses filled with unspoken passion, and in that instant, years of suppressed emotions burst forth between us like a dam breaking under immense pressure. My thoughts were a chaotic storm of confusion, yet my body moved instinctively, responding to a longing I hadn't allowed myself to acknowledge. In that quiet, dimly lit room, the lines that once defined our relationship dissolved entirely, leaving us adrift in uncharted waters. That night was no ordinary moment. It was a profound turning point, a crossroads where everything we once knew about ourselves and each other was forever altered. A part of me reveled in the intimacy we shared, a closeness that felt forbidden and inevitable. Yet a deeper part of me understood that we had ventured into forbidden territory, crossing barriers we had painstakingly erected. The boundaries that once kept us anchored were shattered, leaving us vulnerable to a whirlwind of emotions we could no longer control. I couldn't deny that I had surrendered completely, letting my heart lead me into a space I had sworn never to enter. That night, Adrian and I abandoned every restraint, every carefully maintained line, and let the weight of unspoken feelings carry us to a place of no return. Words were unnecessary. Everything seemed to flow effortlessly, as if the years of hidden desires had finally been unleashed, overwhelming us both. The familial bond we had clung to so tightly was swept away by an irresistible force that neither of us could fight against. The next morning is etched vividly in my memory. The soft rays of sunlight filtered delicately through the curtains, bathing the room in a warm, golden glow. I lay there, beside Adrian, in the space that had always been my retreat, my sanctuary. On the surface, everything seemed unchanged. The quiet serenity of the room, the comforting familiarity of the morning light. But within me, a transformation had taken place. Everything I thought I knew about myself, about Adrian and our relationship, had shifted irrevocably, leaving me to navigate a world that would never be the same again. We spoke very little, our words replaced by a silent, lingering gaze that seemed to stretch endlessly. In that stillness, language was unnecessary. Everything that needed to be conveyed was spoken through our eyes. It felt as though we both instinctively sensed that, from that moment onward, our lives would be irrevocably transformed. There was uncertainty, but it was overshadowed by a profound sense of happiness, connection, and intimacy that filled the space between us, a bond that, once forged, could never be undone. In the days that followed, with my father and stepmother still away, Adrian and I relished the newfound freedom of being alone together. Any awkwardness that might have existed between us had completely dissolved, giving way to a surprising and paradoxical sense of ease. It felt as though we had been released from the weight of society expectations, free to exist as two people deeply in love, untouched by the judgment of the outside world. Our daily routines transformed into something extraordinary. Meals ceased to be ordinary family dinners and became private, intimate rituals, shared exclusively by us. Each evening, we would curl up together on the couch, watching movies, sharing secrets, and engaging in conversations that ranged from the profound to the trivial. Inevitably, every night ended the same way, together in the same bed, as if there were no other possibility. For those fleeting days, I allowed myself to step outside reality, to abandon the fact that Adrian and I were bound by ties of family and name. Instead, we lived as if those constraints didn't exist, as if the world beyond our home had faded away. It felt so natural and effortless that I couldn't resist being drawn deeper into this forbidden yet intoxicating love. We lived like a carefree young couple, unburdened by rules, responsibilities, or consequences. The days were filled with laughter and quiet moments of understanding, while the nights were consumed by passion and the kind of closeness I had never experienced before. Each moment was a heavy mixture of joy and denial, and I let myself be carried away by the intensity of it all. But nothing lasts forever. The inevitable reckoning was approaching, a truth neither of us could avoid. When my parents returned home, everything seemed to slip back into place, as though nothing had ever changed. Lucian and I resumed our roles as siblings under one roof, pretending that every intimate moment we were out in the world together. Just as the threatening effects of the pandemic and the feeling of Lucian pushing me into a car made it seem like every intimate moment we had was nothing more than a distant, fleeting memory or dream. My parents noticed nothing, happily chatting about their travels while Lucian and I exchanged silent glances, fully aware that our secret had to remain buried forever. In the months that followed, our hidden relationship continued. Those stolen moments sneaking into each other's rooms, the long, sleepless nights became a routine, almost second nature. Whenever my parents retired early or left the house, Lucian would quietly come to me, and we would hold each other as if no barriers had ever existed. During the day, we played our roles flawlessly, participating in family meals and upholding the facade of normalcy. My parents remained oblivious, while Lucian and I communicated only through fleeting eye contact, the hidden tension between us growing heavier with each passing day. It made my chest tighten with anxiety, yet I couldn't bring myself to stop. The guilt gnawed at me, but not enough to overpower the pull of our connection. Night after night, our clandestine moments became so familiar that I feared losing them. Realizing I couldn't let things escalate further, I discreetly started taking birth control pills, a precaution I hid from everyone. I was terrified of the consequences of our actions, but instead of stopping, I chose control over surrendering what we shared. I tried to convince myself that everything was still within reach, that we would never be discovered. But about a year later, Lucian graduated and left for college. He moved to another city to continue his education. When he departed, I understood that our relationship would never be the same, even though I couldn't bring myself to admit it. The physical distance between us made everything more difficult. There would be no further stolen nights, no additional whispered moments hidden away in secrecy. The separation forced us to put everything on pause, but I couldn't escape the heavy weight of nostalgia for what we had. It lingered, a constant ache in my chest. After graduating, I decided it was time to find a new path. I applied for a job as an office worker at a digital company. The job wasn't anything extraordinary, but it provided stability, offering a break from the emotional turmoil and conflicts of the past. That's when I met him, the man who would change my life forever. He was the proud owner of a thriving hair salon in the city, a man exuding calm confidence and undeniable charm. From the first time our paths crossed, I was captivated by his strength and gentleness. He was unlike anyone I had ever encountered. Every story he told, every glance he shared with me, made me feel safe, something I had never truly experienced before. We fell in love quickly, everything unfolding so naturally as if it were meant to be. Soon after, we were married and started creating the family life I had always envisioned. At this point in our lives, we have a child together, and everything feels more complete than I could have imagined. The days spent with him and our child allow me to forget, for a time, the painful memories of my past. However, when I am vulnerable, those memories quietly resurface in my mind. I knew I had found a new home, a man worthy of love and respect. But deep inside, the memory of Lucian and those secret days hadn't entirely faded. I wondered if I would ever truly be able to forget it. Yet, I had a family to protect. That was my greatest priority. Yet a part of me still felt guilty toward my husband. He was wonderful, always showing me genuine care and love, but every time I looked into his eyes, I felt a weight on my heart, as though I was hiding a part of my past that he deserved to know. I didn't know if I should tell him about my past with Lucian. Sometimes the thought keeps me up at night, torn between confessing everything to him or keeping this secret buried forever. I'm consumed by the fear that if I tell him the truth, he'll never look at me the same way again. Everything we've built, the little family I cherish, could shatter because of one confession. But on the other hand, living with this secret is like carrying a heavy rock inside me, pressing down on my chest every day. It makes me feel unworthy of the love he gives me, like I'm betraying him by hiding such a part of my past. Honestly, I don't know what to do. I'm at a crossroads, unsure which path is right. Perhaps when you hear my story, you'll criticize me for hurting those around me and for making the wrong choices in the past. I have the only question. If you were in my shoes, how would you handle it? Would you choose to confess the truth, knowing it could destroy everything? Or would you decide to silence, hoping the past stays buried and doesn't hurt those you love? I hope to hear your thoughts in the comments. If you were in my place, what would you do? Should I tell him? Should I come clean and face the consequences, or conceal the secret to preserve what I've built? I'm torn, unsure which choice is right. I would be grateful for any advice, understanding, or even criticism, because truthfully, I'm at a crossroads, overwhelmed by uncertainty, unsure of which direction to go. Honestly, I'm completely lost right now. I don't know what to do, and I'm standing at a crossroads, uncertain about direction. I feel like I'm stuck, not knowing what the right choice is or how to proceed. I can already imagine that when you hear my story, you'll criticize me for the mistakes that I've made and the pain I've caused to those I care about. You might criticize my past decisions and the consequences of my actions. But all I ask is this. If you were in my shoes, what would you do? Would you confront the truth, fully aware that it could destroy everything you've worked for? Or would you choose silence, hoping that the past stays hidden and doesn't cause any more pain to the people you love? I'd love to hear your thoughts and hope you'll share them in the comments. If you were in my position, how would you handle this? Should I come clean and confess everything, knowing the consequences I'll face? Or should I keep this secret, hoping it will safeguard what I cherish most? I'm torn between these two options, unsure of the right decision. I would be so grateful for any advice, understanding, or even criticism, because right now, I'm just lost in doubt, struggling to figure out which path to take. I need help to find clarity, because at this moment, I truly don't know where to turn.